Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. I have been promising you that I would show you these roses that fade out into the distance, kind of a dreamy effect, a foggy effect, we call a dissolving effect. And so I'm going to show you that. I haven't done it, I don't think, too much in the videos. I have done it in some of our books and floral books and stuff that I have. I have over 68 books in print, and you can see some of the links to some of those books over on Amazon. They're really great because with each lesson is at least 30 to 50 step photos, so you can see the step-by-step process. And sometimes that's easier to prop that up in front of you and follow the steps than it is to just watch it on a video. But I do pause very well, so you can pause me at any time, okay? So I'm going to walk through some of the process. This particular board here is a 14 by 18 board. It's just a regular panel. I gave it a coat of the canvas prep medium, which I really like to do. Oh, and see that right over there? Remember I did that one a couple months ago, and I promised you guys I was going to take it up bigger? Well, that's the canvas. And I'm going to be publishing that one immediately after this one, so watch for them. And it'll be a multi-part, bigger landscape. We're going to talk about clouds and some of that misty effect that we'll put into here. We'll see it applied to a landscape. It ought to be a lot of fun, okay? So back to this. I get distracted easy. So here's 14 by 18, okay? 1/4 inch panel, and then one coat of the canvas prep medium, and then sanded lightly. I'm going to allow some streaks and stuff here because I'm going to be painting right on top of it. My palette is all the same. All the colors are listed. Everything I use is listed in the video description, and so you can find it. It's acrylic. Every single video on my channel is acrylic, is the same acrylic. It's our acrylic that I developed back in 2008, so a number of years ago, 16 years ago. And it does everything I want it to do. And so these videos are tailored for this acrylic, and not all acrylics are the same. Okay, so if you really want the learning process that we do here on the channel, you should look into getting those acrylics. But if you can't, then look at the properties, write the manufacturer of the acrylic you're using, and ask them, how do you extend it? How do you do different things, okay? Because all acrylics are different. All right, let's get into this. Okay, so I have that. I'm going to use the fusion brushes. I'm going to start out by using one of my old favorite. This brush I've had around for 15 years. It started out as my varnish brush, and then it goes down to my painting brush, and then it goes down to a prepping brush, which you can see. I use it for prepping. But when I want to create, it's my go-to brush for just about everything. Really old brush. Never throw a brush away because I have a lot of techniques for old brushes. I have my extender medium here. And to this palette, I did add out the Sapphire Blue. Sapphire Blue is a beautiful pigment. It sits between a Phthalo Blue, and it's actually a mixture of Phthalo Blue, ultramarine blue, a little bit of black, and a little bit of white. So if you don't have it, you can make it that way. And it's just a beautiful mid-tone blue. And I'm going to use this as kind of a base. I'm going to take some of this down here. And rather than use up all my white, because I think I will probably use up a lot of that white, I'm going to go with a lighter color here. So, probably here just a little heavier than 1:1 with the white. And I'm going to make a real light, kind of a blue color here. And then I'm going to add a bit of extender to it here. Just mix this up. Add some extender right to it. Almost an equal amount of extender. This will thin it. But this is also going to give me lots of working time to adjust the color. So some areas I'm going to make it lighter, some areas I'm going to make it darker. Okay, I'm going to dip my brush in some extender and then load it up pretty good here with this color. Yeah, see, that's just a real pretty blue, and the flowers just always, they come off real pretty with these kind of colors. Now, you can sit there and leave this more impressionistic, which I do love. I used to always have to have perfect backgrounds, but now I love the impressionism, the casual edge that you get. And see, I just lift the pressure and let the color drag out, and I get the casual edge here to the painting. And this just frames up really, really nice. It's very contemporary. So that's really nice. Now I'm going to apply the color a little heavier into the center. This is where I want to create some misty effects. So I'll leave it light out through here, but I'll apply some thicker color into the center. Get rid of that little bit of my Labrador Retriever trying to add her 2 cents into the painting here. So we'll get rid of that. But so I leave it heavier here. And that's one of the things. Acrylics, how fast an acrylic dries is also how much paint you put on it. Like when you read things, like say even if you use a spray can or anything else, it always says two light coats are better than 1 heavy coat, because 2 light coats will dry faster than 1 heavy coat, because it takes time for all this, what we call the coalescing of all these molecules that happen during the curing process, for those to come together. And the thicker the material on top, the longer it takes. So it's better to apply several light coats than because light coats dry heavy. So this will dry very quickly out here. This in the center where I'm applying it will stay wetter longer. So any place I might want to blur out and stuff, I'll just put on a little bit extra there, and it'll be quite a bit heavier. Now you've seen me in other videos, I take a paper towel and I can draw through and pull out, and you can do that if you feel that you got a little bit too much. So, you know, a lot of these techniques I show you, you can combine all kinds of different looks to get, you know, the look that you want. Now, I am going to add a little bit of contrast to this into the center. I'm going to take some Phthalo Blue, a little bit of violet, which I like, and some burnt sienna. And to this, you can either, because if you're going to keep it thicker, you could add, if you want, some of the open medium. I'm going to stick with the extender. Anytime you start going thicker, you can add, you know, go, and you can see how this goes on dark, but it picks up all that extra color that I have there in the center. And see, because I put so much of it on, it immediately, so look at the difference of the color. Let me just take this here. It immediately softens out. So here it is, the color that I'm actually applying, and you can see how quickly it softens out. So you have a couple of things you can do. You just keep applying this, or, you know, you can use other techniques. Like one I like to use, so I'll take my, and I love that color I put on. So I like a little burnt sienna and a little bit of the violet, and maybe not even mix this up real well. And let's try a little bit of the open medium here. Backgrounds are fun. They're fun to play with. And let's just put on some heavy color here, right through this area. This will create the contrast. And see, I can slide the knife through. And because I put on my color heavier, that color really dies out here, right? Some of you are going, what did you do? Yeah. You have fun with it. I've done all this before because I play around with backgrounds all the time. I love to play around with backgrounds. I love to try things. So, and I know I can soften all of this out, but I'm troweling on basically some heavy color to get a really beautiful effect to it. Now, I'm going to take my bigger brush, and if you want it really soft, you can go mix it up with some of the lighter blue. But I'm going to start pulling through this, light pressure through this, and start to blur it off. This gives you your blurriness. And see, sometimes I'll leave just a little bit of that, not quite so blurry. And the big soft brush is the key. Now I'm going to wipe this because I have dark in it, and I'm going to start up here by the top. And if you want to keep that blurry and into the deep, just add a little bit of your original background color so it'll start off softer, see? And then pull through, right? And it just gives just such great effects. I just love these. You know, there's a lot of people that say, why don't you paint some impressionism with this stuff? And, you know, and I do. Sometimes I really do want to do that. So I'll just soften out here a little bit. I want a few horizontals and a few verticals to pull the eye a little different. I can soften back up through there. That's kind of pretty. Too bad most of that's going to cover up. But I can always come back and add a little more sparks of contrast that I want to have. Heavier colors in some of those areas. So see, I've got some softness. You could actually develop doing this, leaving blurry edges and harder edges. You can develop a 3D effect to your painting there as well. if you want. But see how pretty that, it just gives you a nice, beautiful mottled background there. And we'll add a little more dark. Let's add a little more dark right in here. This is the heavy contrast. And yeah, that we get right into that. That's where I really want the viewer's eye to come up and in. Let's pull so I'll push a little heavier and pull more of a horizontal there. And then we'll drop some of that down into the vertical. I just love that type of effect there. And you can add in, let's go down to like an 1.5 inch brush here. We'll put a little bit of extender into it. You can add in some beautiful colors that will sit in also into your paintings. Maybe some of the greens, a little bit. I love the burnt sienna and the green, a little warm color into some of these cool colors here. This will give the impression of some, you know, leaves and other growing things out here. So we'll add just an impression of it here. Here, some of these, maybe soften that out a bit right there. Now, if I want it really soft, I'll go grab my big brush. But I do like some of those impressions. And you can do some of this, just pick up some of this color with your knife as well. And you can see the knife gives you a completely different, boy, I like that. Just, I love the sparks that the knife can give you. You know, little sparks of life and interest and stuff there. I like that kind of stuff. I like little sparks there. So you can make this all real dreamy looking, or you can do that with it. It's fine, either one. And we're just going to paint a couple of roses into this today. So let's put one. Let me just back a little bit. I don't want to back it all out. And it's nice and thick in here. So I'll put one right up in there. And I don't want to cover too much of this here. Let's pull off just a little more. If I get a cleaner paper towel, so if you change your paper towel, clean your paper towel, you can pull off more if you want. I don't want to pull off a lot, but you can see I can pull off even more. And if you got it really thick, if you add just a touch of water to it, it'll pull off even more. But I think I'm going to keep one right down here, and maybe we'll push one, turn one right there. But we're going to work on the explosion of color here more than anything else. Now, to keep everything soft, rather than going with a small brush right away, the number 10, which is my favorite, I'm going to start painting with a 3/4 inch. I'm going to use some of my background here, some of this real soft blue, and I'm just going to come through and soften some of these back edges. This is the dreamy part of the painting, right? That's the dreamy part of the rose. Really soft. Maybe just a little bit of light color into it. You can add just a bit. You can add a little open medium to it. Okay, start to feel the shape of the rose, which is a circle, right? We talk about a rose being a circle here, right there. We'll push this one in right here. And I always love this. I don't always, matter of fact, I'm not going to do that this time. See, I have that kind of pointed down. Let's not do that. That'll be too much here. So I'm just going to reset this right here. And let's get that nice contrast right back here. Pull that nice deep contrast right there. And let's set a rose right in here, coming up this way. So both roses are kind of climbing. We'll do a climbing composition of roses here. And so that'll allow me to develop some stems, maybe a few leaves right there. But these roses will go up, maybe a smaller little one right out here. And maybe almost into the dark. That would be kind of pretty. A shadowy one right in here, turned sideways. So it's going on to the reverse. So what I do when I do this, so I'm going to take some light here and just blur that in a bit here. And this one, I'll paint soft right up into this. We'll turn this one that way. That'll be pretty. So I have two right up there, one down to here. Both of these coming up. There's, you can, when you're looking for just really simple rose compositions, I do a lot of variation in the 30 Days of Roses, the one that I did a couple years ago with you guys. We did a challenge of 30 Days of Roses, 30 different roses in 30 minutes over 30 days. And it was a challenge. And a lot of you have painted that and loved that, and I did as well. But you can go back and you can look to those smaller paintings for some of the examples that I did and use those to help you draw out a composition that you want to work on. Okay, so there you can kind of see where my roses are going to be, right? And I think I'm going to take some of this blue, a little burnt sienna, maybe a little extra burnt sienna, so the color's a little different. And let's just add a mark or two coming over here, which is just pure contrast over there, maybe even with the knife here. Just good contrast. Just drag that down. See, I love that. Look at that burnt sienna, green and blue there. Let's add a spark of that green in there, right? And then I can soften that out. Let's soften some of that out. I'll use my paper towel here, just the edge of it, to pull some of the extra color off there. And then I'll run my brush through it here. And if it's at all dry, just do this. Just tap in a little bit of extender, because it's still very wet. The extender will help push that. I don't want that to go out that far, so I'm going to back it off. Maybe pull that in just a bit, like that. Maybe even pull that light blue, a lighter blue color here, right in. So it's a little different. I love colors to change throughout the composition. That's what makes them really pretty. But I don't like to always isolate it in one area, so I may just drop a little bit of that look right out here. Just break that. A few little marks. I love little color marks. That's interest. Okay. Do you think I'm crazy, or do you kind of see it? Yeah, sometimes you have to go, where are you going with that, Dave? But it's kind of fun. I'm going to clean out that big brush. I've had it for so many years. I just love it. I'm just going to make sure I don't put anything in it, leave anything in it. Okay, so let's go back to our 3/4 inch brush here for a minute. I'll clean some of that extra color out of it, right? Now let's add, so this is overall really cool. It's a beautiful painting, it's really cool, but let's add just a touch of warmth. Now, orange would be the complement of everything that we're working on. So let's go over to a little orange. Let's add a little open medium. Now this will keep the orange thicker, warmer, thicker. So let's add a little warmth. You can see the difference of that warmth coming in there. Maybe just a touch more yellow into that, okay? And it'll gray down real fast if you play with it too much, because they're complements. Does that make sense? You're putting the orange basically right onto the blues. So they'll gray real fast. So we just want to add a few accents of it. Maybe a little heavier right in here. I'll put it heavier in a rose that I really want to be the rose to interest. Let's use a little Diarylide right in there. That's kind of pretty. Little bit of that spark of that Diarylide. Most of that will paint down as I start to add the whites, because I know whites are more opaquing, but that's kind of pretty, that little spark there in there. So now I'm going to paint, so I'll paint over here, over in this area. As a matter of fact, we could take some of that, we could warm some of this up. See, look at that beautiful warmer color. We could even make a lighter, warmer color and a little open medium. Sometimes, especially with you beginners, it's good to do this so you have something to reach out and into. So I've got a dirty brush. I'll reach out and into this. And I'm just going to build kind of, so the bottom of my bowl is here, okay? My petals are going to come in here. Here's where the calyx would be in the rose. That's my visualization. So I want to pull all my strokes down towards that point. That's where the stem is. That's where everything connects on the rose. Boom, right down here where the stem is, okay? And so all of my stroke, everything I do has to, as I build this rose, has to start to head towards that calyx, and that's what keeps your rose nice and round. Does that make sense? Okay. And let's just push. We can pull out, we can push in. Let's just put in the idea here of the outside petals here. Boom, right in like that. Where those outside petals are, build it slowly. Not too much light too quickly. Here, let's add a few backside. But we want most of this to get dreamy, so you blur it into the background, right? You just blur it back there. We'll put a little bit up here into the front, and I'm just going to let the color run off my brush as I come over here to the shadow side of the rose. Just let the color run off my brush right there and let that side just kind of collapse down. Now, let's take our smaller, let's go back to our smaller brush, now our number 10. I'm going to put a bit of the violet and a bit of the blue in here. I want to keep this violet-y, a little bit of violet into the center, but I want some of the blue to be coming out here. So there's the deep center. I want a little more blue. Maybe even go grab this, because this burnt sienna blue would make a beautiful center as well. And you can use both in here, because that will give you some great shadow colors, right? So I'm going to put the deep dark right in here. I'm imagining another run of petals right in there. But I'm going to lift the pressure, stay way back on your brush, and just kind of tap around into a circle here, applying some of the dark, which is the throat of the rose. Does that make sense? And then I'm going to turn around and push a heavier mark of it over here, which is the shadow side. So this is the line of the bowl, and that's the shadow side right over here. See? And, you know, if you want more violet in it, you can have some violet. Let's put just a touch maybe of this quinacridone. It's a real pretty color. Let's put a mark or two of that quinacridone right in there, because that is just a real pretty color to have in there. This rose back here, I want the back turned edges of it. So I want an idea of the rose here, but I want to turn it away a bit. So I'll put a bit of the shadow in there. And the same as this one right here. It's going to be shadow here. And if it starts to get, see how this is a little stiff. It's a little sticky because I didn't add too much medium to it when I put that on. And so if you want it to regenerate it a bit, just mix in a little extender. That's fine for me. It's okay. But you can mix in a little extender. If anything starts to get too sticky, just add a little extender, which will loosen it up. And especially like if it's in the winter time here, the air is very dry outside. And so the paints dry pretty quickly. But at any time that you have low humidity, the paints are going to dry really fast. And so you've got to feed it extender every once. You've got to make that part of your technique if you want to paint wet into wet. You have to make feeding your paints extender part of your technique. So here I'll mark the bottom of the bowl there for that rose. So you can see the bottom. And see, I use multiple strokes going different ways. I don't always move the same way. That'll make your rose stiff. So I like the rose, the shadows and stuff that I do to go different ways. And see, when your paint's real thick, you get this modeling effect. See this modeling effect that I do? And I just keep hitting it. Try not to hit it too much before you change colors. Let's add a little more of the violet right in there. But try not to hit it too much before you change colors. But doing it a little bit like that will give you all this modeling. And if you want anything to soften out, you can always come back with your big strong brush here like this and pull through and blur it out. Does that make sense? And it'll blur it out. But I don't want to do that too much. I like what's happening here. So let's come back up over here. We'll pick up a little more light. I'm going to add, that's just a touch stiff, so I'm going to add just a little bit of extender to it. Let's come right across here where I want that light source, and let's build out this edge of this petal. and let it kind of fade away there, right back there like that. So I'm going to look at building this edge. Now I'm going to take softer, maybe a little more blue into this, not as much, or put some extender out here so you thin it out. Remember I talk about when you're painting a cloud, thick color into thin color, because the thick color draws and has power, and thin color will disappear into it. So if I want to make a softer petal that's in towards the center that I want to disappear, I'm going to thin my colors out so it doesn't have much power. See how soft it is? And the blue and the undertoning take over right away. So I can make like a little, a little run of petals there. We can put a few softer ones back in here just to say that's moving around like that. And then if I come over here to the thicker color, and now I use this thicker color, it'll sit up on top and it'll draw me a petal right in front. Does that make sense? So I control a lot of the roses, whether I'm painting clouds or whether I'm painting, water going over a rock in a landscape or whatever. I control the thickness I control the look by the thickness of my paint. So let's say I want to put more of an edge right there. I'm going to come right up here with just a little bit of color. Just a little bit. I've already got the idea of the petal, and I'll use the thicker color to draw the edge. Does that make sense? There's a nice edge to that little petal. And let's maybe make a rounding little edge here. Something rounding around. Maybe a little edge right up here. Pull down to give that the idea that there's a little petal there coming in. Maybe a little more of an edge. So to draw the edge, I use just the chisel of the brush and a little thicker color. The key is the thicker color. That's what draws the edge. So if I want to lay this petal up on top of this one, I'll take a little white, a little thicker color. If I add anything to slow it down, it's open medium to keep it thicker. And I'll use the thicker color to draw right on top of that thinner color that's there. And if I push, I'll pick up the blue from underneath and that will soften it in. Or I can pinch wipe my brush like this, take out all that light and come right back in through there and soften that effect. Do you see that? Soften that back edge. And I can work the front edge here a little heavier, right up front here. Draw that edge back in until I get the effect that I want to have on that rose. See? That's how you do it. And I just love painting like that. So if I use my small brush, and you can see I get a lot of movement in here. My number 10, which is kind of a large brush, but it's smaller compared to some of the others I was using, I can draw a lot of interest here into this rose. And I can soften out. So I can paint this multiple petals here or make this rose look like it softens out there. I can build this rose with a lot of petals, or I can give it just soft movement like this, which is what I think I'm going to do on this one. And see, that's too much right there. So this is where I like to push just a little, because right underneath that light is all that dark I put in. And I'll take it back out. But I want this a little heavier right up in here as it's forming the front of this rose. That's kind of neat. Maybe a little bit. Now see, this is starting to tack up a little bit. See, it's still wet, so I'll just add some extender in here. That'll soften this shadow color out and allow me to pull this through. Sometimes I just drag a little bit of that light around. That's kind of pretty. Let's use this to kind of build that light coming around this front a bit more. A couple of petals there on that rose. And maybe drop this down a bit. And so it's just like I'm just kind of figuring out. It's like in one of my books, I talk about the weaving of petals, learning how to see a rose to weave petals together. And that's, how do these petals all kind of flow together to make a beautiful flower? And that's kind of what I'm doing now. But I want this heavier right up here into the front. And sometimes when I don't get, like I feel like I'm fighting, I'm having to work too hard, I go to my bigger brush. I model in some of this other color, and I make the stroke with the bigger brush, and the bigger brush makes the softer, larger stroke. Does that make sense? And you can see, so there's times that I really love to paint roses and stuff, and you'll see that in some of my other videos. I love to paint them with large brushes that would look kind of hard to do, but it's actually easier because you don't have to work so much on the petals, and the rose actually gets a little more lacy. No, I mean, no, not lacy, but softer, blurrier, because you don't have to work as hard. The big brush can just put on that simple stroke of it, that's so much that Sargent and some of the other people I tell you about, the Impressionist painters, that they concentrate on. So I'll just put in a bigger, softer petal right here. Boom, right like that, coming right in there. That's kind of pretty. Let's draw a little bit of color right across the front of it here a couple times to make it look like front petals coming at you here. That's kind of neat. A little more heavy right into the very front of that. So you see this big brush, you would think would be really hard, but for this size of rose, and remember I always try to keep my rose about the size of a fist. That works pretty well. I can use this to make some soft little ideas of movements back here. Just little marks, because we want this to blur out and fade away back there. But we want the front of this to really come forward. So I'm going to pick up even some more paint here and really build that front right there, petal up, maybe a little bit of it here across here. Kind of find that shape that those are going to flow together. Let's put this almost like this one. It's just coming like that. That's kind of pretty. Let's soften this out. Let's grab some of this beautiful toned, maybe a bit of yellow, a bit of burnt sienna, a bit of blue, right out here, softer gray. Put some open medium in it. Let's come back here. Nice warm here, right back there like that. We'll pick up some light, not quite as light, so I'll tap it here on my, and we'll paint like the back side of these petals and let them just fade out there. Let this come in like this, and this just fade out there like that. And so we'll paint like this rose is turned. We'll do some big long ones here, like that. These wings come out a little far, so I'll just soften them back. Let's change the angle. So see, the calyx is here, and that angle's coming in a little bit too. So I'm going to change this angle and make it pull back towards that calyx a little bit more. That's better look to it. It's just figuring out where that calyx is. Everything you paint goes to that calyx, right? Maybe a touch of some darker here that just says, okay, that's the back of the rose back there. And then let's take some light, maybe a little warm, a little diarylide, a little bit of yellow, oxide here. And so that's, I usually would leave it, but I want this to be softer, so I'm just going to blur that shadow around like this. And that also gives me some room to now take the point of this brush and add a petal, that's a crossing petal across the top, and maybe one more right up here. Right like that. So we got the idea of a turning rose there. And I'm going to take my small brush with just a little bit of my dark here. Dark, blue, burnt sienna, a little bit of violet. And I'm going to wipe most of that out of my brush because I want this soft here. And let's just tap I love that, especially in this back one. I love a little burnt sienna in it, which helps gray it out. Keep it soft here. Let this just all fade away, like that rose is just coming in and fading out of that. And you can soften this even more. I could soften that edge, blur it out, you know. You can do all kinds of stuff. But what makes the roses really pretty is these edges. Now I'm going to take some of this, while that dark is in there, just a little extra bit of light, and just draw onto the corner to bring up the corner of light on that petal there. See that little spark of light? That just adds so much. Maybe a little mark of it right in here, because those petals are so close. An edge of it right here. Let's just push an edge right here. And you'll see the difference and really feel the difference when you're switching brushes like this, because I feel that that is just a weak little brush now after painting it with those other ones. All right, so we were talking about maybe having another, let's just do a real impressionistic, just some colors moving into the shape here. Not too much light. We'll let this dark sit on top of the light here. So in other words, we'll come in here with some dark. See, it's the dark center that makes it look like a rose. And then we'll leave the dark here. So this is the dark of a rose going up against the light of a background. And I like that as well. But we could have a little bit of light up here. You know, maybe just a little bit here. Like this rose is just barely there, okay? And that's the way I do like misty looks or something like that. I barely paint them into the painting, barely see their shapes, you know, so that works really well. Now, I could, if I want to, because my edge here is so much found, I could bring a little bit more found. Found means that you really see it. So I could increase the found edge like on this one, which will bring the forward edge of this rose even more forward, see? Reaching out to you. And let's put a little bit more of that found edge right down here, right across the front of that rose right there. See? And that maybe a little bit. So I just use that corner and a little bit. Now, you know, you see me in a lot of times, those of you that have done a lot of painting with the filbert, you see I normally do this type of work with a filbert, but you can do it with a flat. After about 470 roses, you can do it. It takes practice, guys. It takes practice of understanding your paints, and it takes practice of learning how to roll over onto the edge and draw it. You know, I had one lady that just wrote me this letter that was really quite offensive. She said, I just can't do it, you know, you lie, blah, 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 with this. And I was like, I can't show you magic. I can show you how to do it, and then it's practice. But when you're practicing, it's like with me, when you're practicing, you have habits that you get into paint. Especially the longer you've been painting, the more bad habits or just habits you have, and you've got to learn how to suppress those and bring out the stuff that you want to learn new. That takes time. That takes painting. That takes practice. Let's pop a little edge right out here onto this one. Just a little edge, just to say that little rose does come forward just a touch, see? So I'm controlling that. Now, see, this one being down here would look really pretty, leaving it down there quite a bit. So let's thin, and how are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to thin my colors out a bit so they don't have quite as much power. I'll go through the painting of the rose here, like I like to do, but my colors won't have as much power because I'm thinning them. Does that make sense? So anything that I want to go away, I thin so it has an equal power with the background that I already have on here. That, see, still very, very wet. See how very wet that is right there? I can still move that around. It's very, very, if I had a clean finger, you'd be able to see it easier, but it's still very wet. So I thin the color. So here I thicken the color. Here I thin the color. And that's what gives you that that moving away. Does that make sense? Consistency. So here is very soft, and so I'm thinning it out. I might even slide right over here to a little bit of the blue, so the colors that I put on over here don't have as much power as I draw these petals right in there on that rose. Does that make sense? And then I look at it and say, ooh, how much can I bring that out? Well, let's bring that out a little more. Let's put just a touch of warmth into that. We'll thicken it up just a bit. And let's put a little bit warmer side here, right here on the rose. And let that fade away right there. Okay? And decide, ooh, is that good or not? I'll wipe my brush, put a little extender, and pick up some of my burnt sienna, a little blue, a little violet right over here. Let's put a bit of that into the brush, and and it's very light, just a little bit. And I'm just going to lightly, just barely touch the surface and pull through and sink that part of the rose underneath the other one. And I'm feeling the consistency. Now I'll thicken up just a bit. I'm going to come right back here and push that petal on so that it is lighter, but it's closer. It's out of the shadow of that other rose. Does that make sense? So I'll put a little bit of light on there, but it's out of the shadow of that other rose. So I'll let that shadow sit in there. Let's reset that shadow right there. Push it back a bit. Let's take some of this warmth, just a bit of warmth, a little thicker, a little open medium in it will help me keep the thickness to that color. Let's thicken this one up a bit here. That's kind of pretty. Maybe, and I'll step back on my brush so I get more casual mark here. There, I like that. I can suppress part of that. I'll show you in a second. Let's just draw one right out here like that. Push that right into the shadow. Maybe a little more light, so I pick up just an edge of it here. A little more light right there on the edge, right? And just a bit of it right here. We'll let some of that just fade off there. I like all of that kind of fading off there. Maybe let's pick up a bit of burnt sienna with that. Love that bit of the violet here. And suppress this side just a bit. I like that. Yeah, I like that. And bring this in here. And might even, you have a choice of, when you're back here, of going to the dark side here or the light side. In a rose like that. We'll leave some of this dark. I'd like some of that dark just fading away over here like that. I like that. Maybe some soft light, so I'll come right in the middle. Now, I want to make it right in there, right? And I don't want it to have so much power. So do I thicken it or do I thin it? Yeah, I thin it, right? I thin it. So it has no power in my brush. Does that make sense? Take some of it off. And so it's real soft in my brush, and I'll just draw in as much as I think I need to make that look like a rose right in there. Does that make sense? I want to bring this edge out, draw that one little edge, maybe the front of a petal right in here. So I'll slide over this way, pick up a little bit of thicker color so it can draw and set up on top, and maybe just a bit more thicker color. So it draws and sits up on top. There we go. And that's kind of a pretty little rose setting there. I want to build the light right there in the middle. Just a touch more. Boom. Just follow that shape of that bowl, right? Just keep that bowl shape. Matter of fact, I got a little petal like starting right there. Let's just let that happen right there. Right? There we go. A little bit there. Now, let's take a little soft color. Let's come right in here and compress that edge so it shoves underneath the other one. Let's compress this back a bit. A little soft color. Drag this out through here. That'll be softer. Now, I like that. I like that feeling of that softness of those roses there. Whew, good, huh? And now let's take some blue. a little blue, little burnt sienna, mostly burnt sienna. And let's add some of the beautiful stem work that just adds so much to your paintings. And I use the chisel, especially of the big brush like this. It just, and vary the burnt sienna in there. Here. A few little stems, a few little like burnt sienna marks now. Here. That's the spark of the painting that I really like. Let's put a burnt sienna spark right in here. Boom. Just pull that in, right in there. So I said it's nice and it's warm. See, everything in the painting is cool. So this puts a little warm mark into it right there. And just does a lot of pretty little things. The Impressionists love to do this. It's the little sparks of color that make your painting really kind of boom to life, right? Little sparks of warmth here. There. That's pretty good. Blur that out just a bit. And so that's what I do. So if I think that edge is too harsh, I'll just pull it and blur it out, bring up some of the blue, and I'll play that edge a couple times until I get something that I really like there. That looks pretty good. Now, we can also take that green and burnt sienna. Let's thin it so that it doesn't have too much power, because I'm going to paint the leaves. And I don't like my leaves. I like my leaves to be bridges of interest to the roses. So I don't like seldomly do I paint like super interesting 3 or 4 tone leaves, because I like the leaves to be bridges of interest. So this is a little bit warm. I am going to paint this just kind of casually through here. And so some of the blue picks up in there. Maybe some extra burnt sienna right in there. Right? And thin it out so I don't have too much going on here. Let's just push in the idea here. The leaf, maybe take it back off a bit of that structure. Here, maybe one this way. There, like that. Take it off a bit. You can even give the longer little trinity of the leaves there if you want. Something like that. That's a little too pointed. So we'll just blur it out. Take some of the interest off of it, blur it out a bit. So you get the idea of it, but it's not so powerful. And take some of that out. Thin though, thin color. If I don't want it to have too much impact, I thin the color out. Right? Thin the color out. And let's put a more marked one right in there. Like that. That's kind of pretty. Maybe a bit more burnt sienna. As the younger leaves down by the bottom, or out by the top, there'll be more of an orange or a little bit more burnt sienna. So let's just push in a little more burnt sienna. You see me do that a long time. See how I just kind of twisted that brush around to make that point. But I like the paint to be modeled here, so it's not smooth and it's weak. It's thin. It's weak, but it still has enough power to do a little bit of drawing on it, right? A little bit of drawing here, and there, like that. Let's get just a bit thicker here. There we go, just a few little marks, right like that. Boy, is that just ever so different. Now, if I want to advance that back side of that rose, let's take a little burnt sienna blue, a little darker, maybe a little bit of violet, burnt sienna, blue, real dark, and let's negative paint right back there. Negative paint means I'm painting into the background, and see how that lifts that back edge of that rose up again. I can maybe use a little bit of that right in here if I want to compress that side, push just a little more contrast. Sometimes I use this to reshape a petal or something, or get a better edge to it right in there. So, or define something right in here a little bit more. Here, right like that. Maybe a bit here. Blur those together. There, that looks pretty good. So that compresses back there enough behind that. I mean, I could bring this one out a little more. I'll just leave this dirty. Let's go into some of this blue. Then let's pick up a bit more edge of white and a little yellow right here. And we'll bring this lighter front right up there like that. And you can see it now, that rose really sits up there. And I could put in a couple of, just, you know, little, not quite thick, just right in between the two consistencies there, and draw some super, see, it's just a little tiniest bit of color, and draw some super soft, like Ideas, little petals over there. So that one definitely is the queen up there. I can warm her up a bit here into the front. Let's use a little bit of extender here. Pinch wipe some of that extra out. Use a little bit of warmth here, right up into that very front. Add a little more yellow. Take a little more yellow and white. And just build through that one more time and get that nice, let's put a big chunk. I'm going to go with a little bit of texture. Big chunk of texture white right there. Just boom, there it is. That gives ultimate contrast here. A little more chunky white right into the very front. Chunky white right here. Leave a bit of that shadow there. And it's kind of a pretty composition. Very, very different there. And so, you know, when you're getting right back through here like this, so you can reverse it where, and you'll see that in some of the other rose books and stuff that I've done, where you actually paint the back of the rose dark on a light subject up front, and it really looks nice. So if I wanted to define that even more, I can do that. Or I could take some of this this light color right here and blur in. Or, you know, since all of that is really, really wet, I can take a damp brush here like this and just run over it. See how it blurs? See that? So, and I know, see how that blurs out with just a damp brush. And so you can come back in here and blur any of your back edges back here with just your damp brush, because I've painted this all within an hour, and within maybe 2 hours, depending on the humidity and stuff, you can do this with the Heritage paint. You can come back with just water and blur some of those edges that I might want to carry that look. Let's go back up here and let's take some of this dark, thin it out, extender. Right? And let's just create the back edge of this rose, just like that other one there, where you're seeing it against the light, the dark against the light. So that dark is showing up. Does that make sense? We'll draw this a little bit darker right there. And we'll give that edge a little bit of darkness, and then we can soften that light right here. Some of those little light petals coming in here, right like that, just little sparks or movements. And yeah, but we can leave that dark edge back there. That's kind of neat too. So lots of things that you can do, right? There's lots and lots of things that you can do. So if you get out through here, if you want to soften any of this, I don't want to touch it. I don't even want to show you because I don't want to touch it because I really like it, right? And watch it in the next video, okay? But you can soften anything that you want in there. Look at that. See, I love this softness against that boom, powerful contrast. And it just looks really great that way. So it's real different. I hope you enjoyed it. And it's, again, like anything, like what I've been concentrating on for the last 2 years and a lot of lessons here on the channel has been working you guys with your consistencies of paint. And, you know, you want to paint good clouds? Go practice some of the roses like this, because that's basically a cloud technique that I just did. You want to paint good roses, go practice your clouds and practice those disappearing edges and stuff like that, and making that back part of that cloud recede back into the cloud to give it that misty effect. And you do that by balancing the paint, the consistency, to make it disappear. The consistency of the paint you're applying for the cloud or the back edge of a rose has the same consistency as the paint that you're painting into, and it softens right out. It just makes a subtle change. But if you go in there with white, that's thicker against that back edge, and then try to, you have to work and work and work and work and work, and then everything is white because the white has more power. Does that make sense? So as you're making something disappear, give them the same consistency so that your work is a lot easier. In just 1 or 2 little marks, you can put that effect in. Okay? Concentrate on your consistency. Use the extender medium, the open medium. There are 2 different consistencies depending on where you are. Okay? There you go. All right. Thanks very much. So if you enjoyed this, hopefully you did, make sure that you hit like and subscribe. Hit that like button because that helps the channel a lot, guys. I cannot stress it to you as much. If you hit that like button, if you just give us a comment down there that says, hey, great job, that helps our channel a lot in just the analytics, because it shows people engaging with the videos and it pushes our videos off even further. So if you enjoy it, just do us that favor. Hit a quick comment and, and help us send the video out a little bit further just by that kind of support, okay? Those of you that are that are members and stuff within the channel, I will take this and I'll put some final photos of this so you can have some nice color photos to look at to give you some ideas. Wouldn't this be pretty though, with some violets and stuff coming down through here? It would be very pretty. Very pretty. This has almost like a Christmassy rose kind of feeling, that cold, icy feeling, and a little bit of warmth right up in front there. It's kind of nice, okay? There you go, okay? And so I'm going to go right back into start painting that big one here. We're going to draw and paint it. It's going to take a couple of videos. I'm probably going to, with that one, because it's going to take a couple of videos, and you saw me paint the small one, I'm probably going to do it over some time with you guys, because I have some other videos that I want to do, what I call the rock and rose, and I want to do some more water effects with you guys, painting water. We just did the lab, but I want to do some other animal portraits, and so I want to do that. And then I have that big swan that I have to paint too that I've been promising you. We got a lot of stuff to do, but we'll keep going, okay? Thanks very much, guys. And don't forget to go over and check the Paint It Simply channel, because I have a bunch of rose trays that are coming up pretty quickly in our gallery for our, twice a year we run our gallery sale. That's coming up. That helps us, that supports this entire channel, gives us the ability to film like we do. So that's coming up pretty quick in another 2 weeks. So keep an eye out for that. All right? Okay. I'll see you guys on the next one. You have a great painting day and practice your consistencies. See you later.